Welcome to those folks on Instagram and to you out there in the rest of the social media world. And it's good to be here speaking to you again. And my hope is that this will be an encouragement to you, but also maybe a way for you to think about who you are, what you do, and how you come across, particularly in relationships. We're not really mindful a lot of how we are in relationships a lot of times. And so because we're not really thinking about how we are a lot of times in relationships, we tend to act in ways without a conscious awareness. It's called self-awareness. We're not self-aware of how we're coming across. Feel free if you're tuning in, ask a question, make a statement. We'd love to see who's out there. And feel free to, again, ask a question. We'll have a dialogue through this, knowing your motto and an argument. Now, I'm a military guy, right? 12 years U.S. Navy, served with Surface Navy, served with the Seabees, and I served with the Marine Corps. And, there's an old cadence song talking about what's your motivation. What's your motto, your motivation? Conflict is a part of life. Let's be honest, right? You're going to have it. And to have conflict is not really good or bad. It just is. It means you're human. What matters is not that you have conflict. What matters is how you handle conflict. But what really is most important is not just in how you handle conflict, it's are you self-aware of how you're being in conflict, right? Are you self-aware of how you're actually being in conflict? And so this little talk we're going to do today is really about how are you as a way of being, right? What kind of, how do you come across? What's your motivation for what you're doing? Now, we just said a minute ago, conflict is a part of life. It's normal. You can expect it, all right? Just as much as the sun comes up and the moon comes up and the sun goes down, the moon goes down. Conflict is inevitable. Get used to that, folks. Just get used to the fact relationships are going to have conflict. Humans are different. We have differences in opinions, differences in views, differences in perspectives, differences in faith. We have differences because of our child rearing, because of our culture. What matters is how you handle differences and how you treat each other in conflict. Look, in the early days, I was pretty immature. I didn't know how to handle conflict in a healthy way. I was passively aggressive, you see. But everything that we do, everything that humans do is motivated. It has motivations. Nothing happens in a vacuum. You don't behave a certain way in a vacuum, right? If I look over here for a minute, you go, what's wrong with Rick? It's because I thought I saw something over here in my peripheral vision, and my brain went to look at it. That's motivation. I wanted to see what I saw. You see, I wanted to know what it was I saw. Everything we do has motivation. The question is, are you aware of your motives? Are you conscientious enough to know why you're doing what you're doing? It's the idea of when you say something to somebody, particularly to hurt them, what was the purpose in saying it? What did you hope to have it happen when you said that? What did you want as an outcome? You see, what were you hoping that when you say this, what were you hoping that person would do? When you said this, what were you attempting to do to that person? What was your motto, your motivation? What was the purpose behind it? What did you intend to see happen? A lot of times we're not really aware of our motivations. Well, I just wanted to hurt them. Okay, that's a motivation. For what purpose, though? Yeah, you wanted to hurt them. For what purpose? How would hurting them in this moment, what would that do for you? What was it you were trying to get out of it? Those are the mature questions you begin to ask yourself to make yourself very self-aware of what you're doing in a moment so that you can make better decisions on how you want to be in conflict. You know, the organization called Crucial Conversations, there's the book called Crucial Conversations. I love that book because it's really about how do you enter into tough conversations where egos are threatened. Egos are threatened. The chance for emotions to be high is a real probability. And how do you enter into those kinds of conversations so that you can protect each other's ego, preserve a relationship, and have your motto positive? Positive. You know, everything we do has motivations. Sometimes I think in conflict, no, I don't think sometimes, I think a lot of the time, to be honest with you, when we're in conflict with someone, somebody does or says something and they act a certain way. And then over time, you begin to frame people in a certain way, even unconsciously. You begin to get disdain for them. You begin to look at them in contemptuous ways. You see them as dumb or stupid or this or that because you label them. And then once you attach a label, they're no longer human. They become the label. Did you get that? They're no longer human. They become the label. If you label someone stupid enough, right? You label someone stupid and you begin to see them as stupid, then no matter what they do, you're going to put them into the context of stupid. That's a very bad place to be when you've already framed a person a certain way. And then no matter what they do, you're going to see them as stupid. You're going to see them as dumb. You're going to see them as this. You're going to see them as that. And from their perspective, that old phrase, damned if I do and damned if I don't, it doesn't matter what they do. You're always going to see them in that light, even if in reality it isn't true. It isn't true. Why do we label people? I think labeling has different purposes. One, so we can kind of, if we can label something, do we understand it better, right? If I understand something better, I better know how to approach it, I better know how to deal with it. So I think labeling, it gives us the ability to construct the world in a certain way so that I can approach you based on that label so that I have a construction of who you are. I get sense of it. Because when I can label something and understand it by that label, it gives me a sense of security. It gives me a sense of a measure of control on how to deal with that person, you see. And when you label someone, I feel better. Labeling something allows me also to know how to treat it. If I can label this thing a certain way, then I know how to deal with that. I know how to treat it. I know what kind of medications to give it, right? I know what form of therapy to use with it, you see. The problem is, here's what I have found. You could have a cluster of behavior that you label one way, but those same clusters could also be 3 or 4 different labels. I always find it's better possibly not to label something, though I know in the world of mental health, you got to have a diagnosis. So labeling's a part of life. Let's be honest, cancer is cancer. I get all that, schizophrenia is schizophrenia. But you haven't noticed that a lot of multiple personality disorders are also diagnosed as schizophrenia or a psychotic disorder, or they've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, or they're diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. All of those are pieces of it, but really it was MPD, which is now known as DID, dissociative identity disorder. You see, we tend to see people through the filter of the labels we want to see them through. But in so doing, in my mind, they cease to be human. They start to be the label. They start to be the label. Why? So I can deal with you better. I have a better sense of how to approach you, how to deal with life with you. I understand how I need to construct my world around you because now I know who you are, label. I know what to do with me. I know how to relate to you. The problem comes, as I said a minute ago, is when you start to define people by a label, then they, in your mind, they become the label. Have you ever noticed, though, we also label ourselves? I'm stupid. I'm dumb. I'm unlovely. I'm inadequate. Those are labels. And when you get to a point where you believe the label to be true, it will be true. Or as an old proverb said, as a man thinks in his heart, he will be. If you keep thinking you're stupid enough, you will be stupid enough. If you keep thinking that you're inadequate, you will be inadequate. If you keep thinking you're ugly, you will be ugly. If you keep thinking, fill in the blank. Because once you believe the label for yourself, you will become the label. Because as a man thinks in his heart, that's the emotional part of the brain, he will become that thing. Sadly, people like to put labels on us. The question is, did you adopt that label they try to put on you for yourself? A lot of times in childhood, we do that, right? You'll pick up messages from your parents or others, he's this, he's incompetent, he's this, he's uneducated. And then what happens is you'll start to believe that for yourself. I think it was, don't quote me on this one, but I think it was a story of Einstein. He didn't do well in school, and teachers labeled him a certain way. But his mom was smart enough to get him out of that and teach him a different way. And we know who Einstein is to this day, right? He never believed the label that was being put on him. In the early days of my life, I actually believed the labels. I'm sad to say, but I did. I believed that I was inadequate. I believed that I wasn't good enough. I believed that I was unlivable. I believed that I didn't have value, because I put those labels on myself. I call them stories now. But I put those stories on myself. How you doing, Kurt? Yes, true. Negativity will bring contempt. But I think the contempt comes because unconsciously or consciously you've labeled someone a certain way. Kurt's right about that when he says negativity breeds contempt. I want you to think of it this way. Contempt is different than anger. Let me understand the difference. If we are angry at each other, the anger could be destructive, but at an unconscious level, the fact that we're angry at each other, the anger, being angry at each other, unconsciously, you still view each other as equals. I still see you as an equal to me. We're just angry at each other. Contempt is more insidious than anger. Here's why. Contempt says that I am morally superior to you. I am better than you are. It makes you less than me. And that's why it is much more insidious, because contempt makes me better than you. Contempt can be verbal, calling people names, putting them down. It could also be things like rolling your eyes at them, pursing your lips. All of that shows contempt in front of the person. But I believe once you start showing contempt for another person, it's because you have labeled them a certain way. Is inferior, less than you. Sadly, even in our marriages and our families and relationships, when we get into conflict, we either consciously or unconsciously label people a certain way. And once you believe that label is who they are, you will begin to treat them that way. If you believe someone's a nutcase, if you believe someone's inadequate, everything you do is going to label them through that. You're going to that label. That's how you see them. It becomes the prism by which you look at them. And you're not open to any other possibility that the label you've attached may not be. Because we're always looking for the label. That's the problem with labels. Whenever you label someone, you're not looking for the good. You're looking for the things to prove the label to you. You look for evidence of the label constantly. And that doesn't matter what that person is, who they are, or how good they are. In your eyes, they'll never be. Why? Because you've already defined them a particular way. You always treat them that way. And it's my personal contention that when we live that way, that doesn't say anything about the person with the label. That actually says more about who I am. who I am as a person, who I am as a man, who I am as a human, and how I treat people, and whether I treat people with dignity, or what we say in our world, whether I treat people with goodwill and respect, humility and empathy. Because a greater way of living life is to treat people with goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. But when you label a person a certain way, you tend to not have goodwill with them. You tend to not be respectful. You tend to not be caring. Why? Because they're the label. And it always will see people by the label. You're just a drunk. You're just whatever. I think you get the idea. So when you label someone, then you treat them in a certain way. What's the purpose? What's the motivation? You ever been in an argument with someone and you started to raise your voice a little bit, gut in their face, shut down, withdraw, start going like this. Oh, yeah, whatever. Okay, well, just whatever. You start to pull back. You don't want to be there. All of that has motive. All of it has motive. What's your motive? Maybe the getting forward and attacking is because you feel threatened. And so as you start to fight, the fight response of the brain, as you start to go in more aggressively, it isn't just because you're protecting yourself. The part of the motivation is to demean them, maybe. Maybe it's to make them inferior. Maybe it's to hurt them. Maybe it's to make them afraid. Maybe it's to disrespect them. Maybe it's to put them in their place. Maybe it's to force them to say they're sorry. That's motivation. All of that's motivation. Hang on a minute. That's motivation, folks. All of that is motive. The question you have to ask is, once you understand what your motto is, what are you attempting to do? I ask questions like this. When you do something, I will usually ask clients these kinds of questions. When you just did what you did there, what did you hope would happen? What was your motivation? What did you intend to happen? What was the outcome you were looking for? Well, I yelled and screamed and called them those names because if they do that, then they understand how much I've hurt them. And if they understand how much they've hurt me, and they understand how much it hurt me, they would stop. So your motive was to get them to stop doing what you're doing, what they're doing. Yes. Is what you're doing going to make that happen? Well, I'm hoping. It's not about hoping. Is it working? Is what you're hoping to happen, does it happen? And typically, folks, the answer is no. It doesn't happen. And it won't happen. Why? Because unhealthy, immature behaviors are an attempt to do something for you. Never really the relationship. Never really the relationship itself. It's about you and what you want and what you can get. Listen to this, at the expense of the relationship. In our work in Relate Well, we believe the most important part of any relationship is the relationship at all. We call it, this conversation is called the power of us. When us wins, you both win. When us loses, you both lose. Sadly, today in America, we don't value relationships. We value winning arguments. We value being right. Did you know that forcing agreement will kill a relationship off in a minute? Did you get that? Forcing agreement will kill a relationship off in a moment. But we as Americans, we don't value relationship. We value agreement. We value winning arguments. I'm not going to agree with you, but you have to agree with me. That'll kill a relationship off. The great researcher on marriage, and everybody's being trained by John Gottman in the Gottman model for doing marriage counseling. But what Gottman really was brilliant at was his work as a researcher on marriage. Did you know, listen to this, folks, 68% of problems, did you get that? 68 68% of problems in a marriage do not have a solution. Let that sink in. 68% of problems in a marriage don't have a solution. Gottman's term for that is they're perpetual problems. They're just ongoing. Why? Because there's no solution to them. But here's what he found out in his research, what he calls masterful couples. Masterful couples, couples who are mature, who live out of, in my language, who treat each other with goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. People who live by what we call the four protectors of us, goodwill, respect, humility. They value the usness in the relationship rather than winning an argument. So all the masterful couples do is around these unsolvable / perpetual problems, what they do is they just negotiate around them because they'd rather have the relationship than win something. That requires maturity. That requires goodwill. That requires a respectful person. And I'm also going to argue it requires you being a healthy, mature person within yourself. That you have a healthy sense of self-love. You have a healthy sense of self-respect. That you know that it's okay to not be okay. It is okay to not be okay. But if it's not okay to not be okay, then you start to live in such a way to make yourself feel okay. And in so doing, you hurt people along the way. Why? So you can make up the deficits emotionally that you have. Guilty. When I first got married, I was emotionally a child, and I did not handle things well in the early years of my marriage. Neither did Lil. We both came from broken homes. We never saw a healthy conflict modeled. Thus, we never knew how to do it. And there are times that I would hurt her just so I could feel better about myself. And I can know that I hurt her so she could feel the pain that I feel. Moto. Terrible motivation, though, because it's all about me. It doesn't save an us. If you keep that up, you'll kill the usness off for sure. What's your motto? In order to know what your motivations are when you're in conflict in a moment, it requires you to have self-awareness. Did you get that? It requires you to have self-awareness. Because if you're not self-aware, how are you going to know what your motto is? How are you going to know what the motivation is for why you're doing what you're doing? And here's something else. Many times, when we see someone do something, we interpret their behavior. Remember I said earlier, we see people through the label. We interpret their behavior in a negative light. I have met this wonderful couple, and he kind of sees her as OCD, and she sees him a certain way. And as they were leaving my office, she wanted the two pillows put on my couch a particular way, and he said, "Oh, that's her OCD." And I said, "No, not really." I said, "You can look at it that way, but see, OCD, so that's OCD. Label, that's OCD's behavior. I don't think that way." I said, "No, actually, she came in and she wants to leave the office looking nice. In her mind, having the pillows the same way out makes the office look nice, and I can appreciate that." You see, because I don't have her with a label, I can understand her behavior in a different context, in a different light, as we would say. And she smiled with that. Once you label someone, you treat them a certain way. If you are not self-aware that you're treating someone from the label that you have attached to them, you're going to hurt them and you're going to hurt the relationship. And personally, you make yourself look disrespectful. Make yourself look like a person of ill will. You actually show your own immaturity. Because mature people don't live that way. But immature people do. And so you got to be self-aware. Now, self-awareness is going to require you to move to patience. Self-aware. My brother Don and I, we're looking at starting what we call 2 Marks mentoring. Yeah, our name's Marks, right? TWO Marks mentoring. And we both have transformed our lives, and we love to mentor people. And so we're looking at kind of establishing the 2 Marks mentoring, particularly mentoring men, become healthy, mature men. But one of the things that, Don always says, when I look at people and I see what they're doing, I assume the best. I say it this way. I don't assume someone's choices, though they may be unhealthy and inappropriate. I don't assume some nefarious intent behind it. I don't sense that there's some evil intent in what they're doing. I think they may just be hurting and struggling, or they don't know what to do different, and they're doing what they know to do. And yes, it causes pain, but they're trying to get something accomplished in an unhealthy way. Why? Because they're wounded, because they're feeling shame, they're feeling afraid, who knows? But self-awareness is when you are aware that that is happening in the moment. You have an emotional vocabulary where you can go, I think I'm being disrespectful. I'm coming across as ill will. You get it? You must be self-aware. And when I'm aware of what I'm doing, then I can ask myself in that self-awareness, what am I trying to accomplish here? What am I really trying to do? Well, I'm insulting the world. That's what self-awareness. For what purpose? So she can hurt like I'm hurting. That's your motto. You want to hurt like you're hurting. That's your motto for doing this? Yes. Now I can begin to move into self-control and make some decisions. Is this motivation something I want to do? Yes, I want to be that way. Feel free. Don't complain about the consequences that are coming your way, though, because you're basically saying, I want to act in an unhealthy, immature, adolescent, childish way. Go ahead. Just don't complain about what you get. That's one of the things I always say a lot is I find it disingenuous when you treat people on a regular basis, kind of consistently, in a way that devalues them, that invalidates them, that tears them down. And then you wonder why they walk out of your life later. You wonder why they're upset with you. You wonder why the relationship's falling apart. It's because you're creating it. You're creating the very thing that your behavior would create. If you treat people as a source of pain, you're just going to get pain back. It's the idea of sowing and reaping, or the law of attraction. People who sow anger reap anger. People who sow fear reap fear. People who sow discord reap discord. You will get it back at you. And I always tell people, if you want to sow discord, feel free. Just have the goodwill and maturity to not complain about it when it comes back at you. Once you are self-aware, you can ask the questions of, what am I hoping to happen? What's my intent here? What? And when I said this, what did I want that? What was the effect I wanted to have on Luella? Now you know your motto. And now you can question your motto. Is this loving? Is it kind? Is it goodwill? Is it respectful? Is it caring? For sure, when you do those things, it's out of pride. There is no humility to it. And then you can move to self-control and say, you know what? I don't want to be that person. I don't want to treat Luella that way. I don't want to treat you that way. I want to be better than that. I want to live the higher way, not the lower way. And in my world, I clean it up in that moment and say, Luella, would you forgive me? I think I'm coming across disrespectfully. I don't want to hurt you. And I can change my motivation. Why? Because when I change my motto to wanting to be a person of integrity, when I change my motto to wanting to be a person of value, when I change my motto to being a person of goodwill, when I change my motto to being a person who's respectful, when I change my motto to being humble, when I change my motto to being a person of compassion, then my behaviors towards you will change as well. My behavior towards you will change as well. You see, you're the only one that can stop you doing what you're doing in a moment. It's called self-control, but you can't have self-control without the self-awareness. But when I become aware what my motto is, then I can evaluate how I want to be as a way of being. And if you decide you still want to be disrespectful and all of that, that's fine. You're declaring this is how I want to be as a way of being, and go be that. says a lot more about you than it does the other person. However, if you stop yourself and go, you know what, I think I'm coming across as disrespectful. I think I'm coming across as unloving. I think I'm coming across as uncaring. And I don't want to be that person anymore. You will stop what you're doing and you will change it in a moment. Why? Because you have made a decision that your motto from now on is to be a person of goodwill, to be a person who's respectful, to be a person of integrity, to be a person who's credible, to be a person of high values. And then whenever you enter into conflict, your motivations will never be to cause harm or hurt, invalidate, put down, whatever. It's to build up, it's to encourage, it's to respect, it's to speak value into other people, it's to preserve the relationship itself. Much higher way of living your life. What's your motto? What are your intentions when you do what you do? Move to self-awareness, define that motto, and ask yourself, is that how you want to be in this moment? If it is, okay. The higher way, the mature way is to go, you know what? I think I'm doing this to make Luella hurt so she can hurt as much as I hurt. And that's really disrespectful. There's no goodwill in that. Why would I hurt the person that I love? And I stop it in a moment, self-control, and I change it. And I move forward in a new way of being. I hope maybe in some way this is helpful and get you to think about your motto in an argument. Get rid of labels, folks. I get that we're going to have them. But what if you begin to see this person as the person you married, as the person you value when you're dating? That person's still inside of them somewhere. Could it be the way you've treated them has squashed that, has weakened that part? Just some thoughts. Thanks for taking time to hear me out. I'm Dr. Rick Marks with Relate Well. If you want to learn more about us, go to relatewell.us, relatewell.us, and you can find our core curriculum there. If you're a therapist, we have clinical training for therapists to use the Relate Well process as a part of your working with couples either premarital or in counseling. Or if you're a faith pastor, we actually train churches how to use Relate Well in marriage mentoring as well through a marriage mentoring program using a skills-based curriculum that's research-based. And we would say biblically sound. It's Dr. Rick. Thanks for taking your time to listen. Bye-bye, y'all.